Hello. Um, Today we're going to be building a React autocomplete. So as somebody's typing, we're going to be able to see the suggestions of the possible words that we think the user might be trying to type. And when they select one, that's going to populate the input for us. So let's go ahead and get to work. So I'm going to start off with just a clean slate. This is our React app. Not too much going on here. We've got our app. So let's go ahead to our app JS and be around all of these things. And so for this, I'm going to be creating kind of a widget of autocomplete that's going to have some names. So I'm going to just put the names in here so we can see the names that I'm planning on passing in. And let's start. So I'm going to just make sure that everything is hooked up. No. Should see that reflected in here. Great, we have our hello, and let's do it. So I'm going to call this autocomplete, and this is going to take in names as props, and I'll just pass these names in. So let's go ahead and make this component. To start off, I'm going to make a new folder called components, and inside of here, we're going to make our autocomplete file. Let's go ahead and do it. So this is going to be a class component, and the reason we're going to make this a class component is because it's going to be keeping track of state. Now, of course, if you're learning React and you're completely current up to date with hooks, we could make this a functional component with hooks, but since this is for this target, we're going to do this with class. Maybe in a later episode, we can update this to showing the hooks. So we're going to import component React, and let's go ahead and make this. So class autocomplete, that's going to extend our component, and let's go ahead and remember to export it. Default. I can move that export default around if I want. I like having it at the bottom, so that's where I'm going to put it today. And let's go ahead and import it. From /components /autocomplete. This is the relative path. So let's make sure that we need to have a render, the only required method, a lifecycle method in the class component. And let's go ahead and just return something. I don't know why that keeps happening. We'll return something little, plain old, we'll call it a section. We'll just say, get this to, and we'll say, make sure that everything's working. So we have, so we know that for this autocomplete, we're going to need our user to be able to type something into it. So let's go ahead and add an input. And good thing with an input is to have a label. So let's go ahead and make a label. And for this, I will say name. This is for the name for them to search. And inside of here, oops, name. And inside of here, let's go ahead and add input. Self-closing tag. We can go ahead and say that this is type text. By default, it will be type text. And let's go ahead and give it a value property as well as an onChange. So in React, we want to have what's called a controlled component, which means that the value of our input should reflect what the value of state is. And as we make changes to input, it should update our state. So let's go ahead and add that state. So I can put this in a constructor. I can also just do it here. And I will say, I'm going to call this name. This is going to be the name that someone is searching for. And let's go ahead and say our value is going to be, and we could say this state.name here. Or I can destructure this so it looks a little bit cleaner. So inside of our render, let's take out name from our state. Now I can just have name as my value. We also need to have a change. So whenever there's a change, we can see it. So right now we see we'll have an empty thing in here. And now if I type, nothing happens. The reason that nothing happens is because our value is pointing to our state, which is an empty string. And we don't have anything to change our state, so our value doesn't change. So we're not completing this circle. So let's go ahead and add our onChange. OnChange, I'm just going to call this handle change for now. This dot handle. And this is going to be our callback function to a change. So let's go ahead and write that function here. So if I were, depending on your setup, you might have to bind this in the constructor, but because I built this with Free React app, I don't need to do that binding. So I can just bind this ES6 syntax. So handle change. This is going to take an E, which stands for the event. And what we want to do is update our state. So this dot set state, we'll say we want to update the name to be the E dot target dot value. And this could be done in one line. So I might as well make it one line. It's not really that warrants multiple lines. Save it and go ahead and make sure that now as we type, we do get something. Great. So that's the first part. We've got our input and we've got the ability to type something into it. The next part is rendering a list based off of the name that the user is searching for. So this is going to be a UL filled with LIs. So let's go ahead and put that underneath here. So we've got this UL, and the LIs in here, it's going to depend on what's being matched. So let's go ahead and create a matches variable. Const matches. What matches is going to do is it's going to grab all of the names from our props. So this dot props dot names, and from this it needs to filter to only be the ones that we have matching. So I'll show it without filtering first. So we'll say dot map, and we'll have for each name we want to return an LI, and each LI will just be the person's name on the inside. Now, this will give us a warning in the console. And let's go ahead and show the call matches here in our JSX. And we see all of the names right away, right there. And we get this nice warning. Some of those were old warnings. So we get this warning that says each child on the list should have a unique key. And so what they're talking about here is we are doing this iteration with map. And so each child needs to have a unique key. So this is for React's purposes so that they can keep track of any changes and know what to update. So this is for updating, deleting, creating. And so this has to be unique. It's good for the string. I know I'm going to say all the names in our list are going to be unique. So I'm going to just make that the key. I can make it an index as well. That's technically what it does by default, and that's why it's only a warning. So we clear this, we'll refresh our page, and warning is gone. So that's exciting. But we see too many names. I don't want to see names, right? I only want to see the names of the matches. And I also care about capitalization, right? I think the user should be able to type in alley and get alley, whether or not they've capitalized their A. So there's a couple of different things that we need. So first, let's go ahead and filter this. Let's just say dot filter here, dot filter. We want whatever the list comes back. So filter anything that doesn't match. So for each name, we want to say that the state So this is maybe not a great naming thing. I'm noticing I've got name all over the place. So let's call this input val instead of input val. This is input val. This is input val. And I think it, but make sure that everything is still as we want it. So we're no longer seeing the list, and that's because currently our filter returns undefined, which is false for every single thing. If I were to just return true, we would again see every person's name. Excellent. So now let's see whom is actually matching. So for each name, we'll say return name dot to lowercase. So let's lowercase it so that it's not case sensitive. Dot index of, and we will pass in our state. So this dot state, where we already have that access that variable. So I'll just call it input val. Input val. And we want to lowercase that. Dot to lowercase. So now both strings are lowercase. And we want to make sure that the index of that is equal to 0. So let's go ahead and save and see how that affects our code. So currently, everybody is a match. But as I type A, we only end up with Ali. And as I type B, we get Bart. B-A-R. C, we get Bart. B, we get Barbara. If I try to type in Sarah. So now we are kind of getting this nice autocomplete. Of course, it's not quite done yet, but it is getting close. We can clean these up to be one line, right? We don't, we can do implicit returns, still make it multiple lines, but there's no need for this to be writing return. So we've got our matches. It's grabbing our props. We're filtering that prop to check that each name starts with the lowercase letter. I'm saying starts with, I think there might be a method called starts with, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember. So I'm just going to do it with this because I know index of will work. And we want the index of to be 0 because I don't want partial matches. So if I type in E, I don't want names that don't start with E. So even though Ali has an E, Zeller have an E, like, so that would be something different. That would be me saying like includes or something instead of index. And then we're mapping and we have our key. So now the last part of this is when the user clicks on something, we want it to actually show up. And let's go ahead and add a placeholder and say put placeholder. We'll put this to. So it looks nice. So if it's empty, I'd rather this show anybody. So we can think about that and how do we not show everybody? So let's check. So we could do a little logic here where it says if input val. So if there's an input val, const matches is equal to an empty array. Else, we'll make matches. So now, we're getting an error, and it's coming from line 29. Line 29 says matches is not defined. Well, I have declared it. Let's go ahead and declare it outside, and we'll call it matches here, and we'll make it an empty array. Oh, and this would be if there is no input val. Okay, well, that match is equal to that. We'll remove these consts. And we can just say, so if input val actually has a length here, we want to reassign it. Excellent. And we're starting to get that autocomplete behavior. So that's very, very cool. So the last thing we really need is if I type in S and I click on Sarah because I'm happy with it, I need for this to be able to autocomplete our S here. So let's go ahead and add an on-click listener to these LIs. Or we can add them to the UL. Trying to decide. I think for now we'll just add it on to the LI. So we'll add this on the click. We'll call this dot select name. We want to select the specific name. So let's go ahead and say select name. We'll take in our E. And we want to look, let's go ahead and look at this E and see what information we actually have associated with it. So I'm going to refresh over here and start typing in Sarah. Click on Sally. We hit our debugger. And let's go ahead and check. We can see E dot target, which is the LI. We can see things about this. So let's see. Maybe we set target dot text content. That looks great. And we get Sally. So I think I can use this here inside of our set state. So I'm going to make this one line again. We can just say this set state. So we'll update our input val to be our E target dot text. So I'm going to save that. And let's go ahead and try it. So I type an S, click on Sally, and Sally auto populates. Nice. That's I'd say that's a win. I think it'd be nice to not have Sally there when I click on it. I think let's say we add Jillian here. Jillian. So if I were to type in Jill, I don't think I need to select Jill. Which I think it's a name. Or maybe after I've clicked, the matches go away. So let's try that. So let's add a selected property. And I'll set this to false. And whenever a user's typed, I also want that to be false. I want to ensure that that's also false. So I'm going to say selected is also false. And so that way, if they type in, so the goal is when they type in and select on Jill, then they don't need to keep seeing Jilly and Jill they've already selected, unless they were to continue to type, which in that case, they could see more matches. So every time they type, we want selected to be false. If they've selected a name, we'll set selected to true. So, and then in our filter, we'll say if input val and not selected. Otherwise, we want it to, so if it's selected, if it hasn't been selected, and there's an input, we want to see it. If there's an input and it has been selected, we don't want to see it anymore. So let's go ahead and try that. So we type in J, let's say I click Jilly, and we don't see anything again unless I change it, and then we see Jill. And that is a pretty good autocomplete. I'm not sure what else we would really need. So hopefully you've learned a little bit something here. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions that I can help answer. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.